Alright, hello algebra fans. Today we're going to be working on solving linear inequalities. Okay, a couple things before we get started. When I am graphing an inequality on a number line, and let's just do a basic graph, if it's x is greater than 2, first of all, if it's a greater than symbol or a less than symbol on the number line, that's going to be an open dot. Okay, so I'm going to graph this as a 2. I always require 3 points. So plot the 2, I want one below it and one above it. And then it's greater than, first of all, it's an open dot. And then it always points the same direction as the inequality. And that would be the solution to that. You will never have a problem where the variable is on the right hand side. The variable has to be on the left hand side when it's solved. So if you had 2 is less than x, that would be incorrect. I would mark that wrong. Okay? If I have x is less than or equal to negative 3, if it's a less than or equal to, the equal to sign, that is going to be a closed or a filled dot. So that is going to be graphed. Again, put the negative 3 here. And be careful when you're graphing negative numbers. The more you go to the left, the more negative. So this is going to be negative 4, and this is going to be negative 2. Be very careful about that. Since that's a less than or equal to, it's a filled dot. And again, this one points to the left, so this one points to the left also. And that's the graph of x is less than or equal to negative 3. Okay, so that's basically how you graph just a standard inequality. That's one of the differences between solving inequalities and equalities, is you graph an inequality and you don't need to graph an equality because it's just a point. Okay, let's do a little solving here now. If I have 2x plus 3 is less than 11. I'm going to subtract 3 from both sides, and you always have to show all your work, just like back in the day. Always show your work. 2x is less than 8, and divide both sides by 2. X is less than 4. So notice the variable's on the left hand side. I can graph it now. There's 4, 3, and 5. It's an open dot, and just as the inequality points, it's going to point to the left. And that's the answer to that. So there are two parts to this problem, two solutions. X is less than 4 is one solution, and the graph is the second part of the solution. So on a quiz, a test, you will see two parts to it. You will see a blank for answering the inequality, and then also for graphing its solution. Okay, let's try another one here. If I have 2/3 x minus 4 is greater than or equal to 8. Same thing. Make sure you do your addition subtraction first, and your last step will be your multiplication and division. So I'm going to add 4 to both sides. So I get 2/3 x is greater than or equal to 12. And remember, to get rid of a fraction, you multiply both sides by the reciprocal of the value in front of x, about the coefficient in front of x. So I'm going to multiply both sides by 3/2. Turn that into a fraction. That cancels. And we get x is greater than or equal to, that's a 6 and a 1, 18. Okay, again, you graph it. We're going to put 18 in the middle, 3 points total, so 17 here, 19 here. It's a greater than or equal to, so it's a filled dot, and it points to the right just as this inequality points to the right. So those are basic inequality problems. So I said there were two differences between equality and inequality. One is you have to graph it. The second is as follows. If you ever have a negative, so let's just start out with negative x is less than 5. If you ever have a negative, if you divide by -1, or if you divide by a negative, so let's just write this out here. If you divide and actually or multiply by a negative, and this is a huge rule, people, huge rule. If you divide or multiply by a negative, you flip the direction of the inequality. So I divided by -1. My problem now becomes x is greater than 5. It's very simple. If you multiply or divide by a negative, you flip the direction of the inequality. No exceptions. And then I'm not going to do any more graphing because we know how to graph. Maybe I'll graph a few later. Okay, so let's try a couple other examples. 3 minus 2x is greater than or equal to 9. We're going to subtract 3 from both sides, just like normal. -2x is greater than or equal to 6. Divide by a -2. X is, and then you flip the inequality sign because we divided by a -2. That's your answer. Okay, now this is where it's a little tricky sometimes, is you get a problem like this. 2x minus 3 is less than or equal to -11. We add 3 to both sides. We have 2x is less than or equal to -8. People see this negative right here and they think, oh, it's negative, so I'm going to switch the inequality sign. But remember, you have to divide by a negative. So this number in front of the x, the coefficient is a +2. I'm dividing by +2. I do not flip the inequality sign. And that's my answer. X is less than or equal to -4. Only if you divide or multiply by a negative. So let's try a few more examples here. 1/4 x. I'll make it -1/4 x minus 8 equals -11. I add 8 to both sides. I get 1/4 x. Oops, needs to be less than or equal to. 1/4 x is less than or equal to -3. Multiply both sides by 4. X, once again, I didn't divide or multiply by a negative, so my answer is x is less than or equal to -12. Okay, one last example here is 8 minus 1/3 x is less than 2. Subtract 8 from both sides. -1/3 x is less than -6. Multiply by the reciprocal, which is -3/1, or just -3. And remember, if you divide or multiply by a negative, you flip the inequality sign around. So it's greater than +18. And that's your answer. And we'll do just one with just a division here too. 3 minus 7x is less than -4. Subtract 3. -7x is less than -7. Divide by -7. X is greater than 1. That's your answer. So these are basic inequality problems, and again, the only difference is you have to make sure you're graphing them, and when you divide or multiply by a negative, you switch the inequality sign around.